Under the cold, pure white snow, Yuki was approached by a vampire, wanting to suck her blood. While she was frozen in fear, Kaname would show up, killing the vampire and saving her. Years later, Yuki now attended the famous Cross Academy, a private institution where all students stayed in dormitories. With a lot of girls gathered in front of the gate, Yuki rushed in to stop them from going in because students weren't allowed to access and needed to return to their dorms. However, the girls accused her of trying to monopolize everyone in the night class. As the gates opened, all the girls were gushing over the handsome boys before them. Hanabusa and Akatsuki were at the center of attention, with Hanabusa loving every bit of it. The girls quickly swarmed them both, and in the process, ran over Yuki. That's when Kaname would come to help her up, and in that moment, she remembered that snowy day where her memories began. Kaname hoped she'd relax on her work a bit, but Yuki believed she owed him her life. He told her not to worry about it, since it was long ago. While he caressed her face, that's when Zero showed up to get his hands off her. As Kaname left, two girls went to give him a flower and a love letter. This caused Yuki's heart to ache a bit, and she decided to take it out on Zero with the excuse he was late to help out. Kaname joined up with Seiren, who offered to help him with his items, and he drained the life out of the flower first before they left. During the night class, the vampires were praised for making an effective blood tablet, which had been accepted worldwide. However, they didn't think of it as a big deal. On the other hand, Senri commented on how yummy Yuki looked, which caught Kaname's attention. Ruka noticed Kaname was quite interested in Yuki, which he didn't deny, and it made her furious enough to crush Hanabusa's hand with her notebook. The moon then went into hiding, and the night of the vampires was here. They were creatures born from legend, who hid in the darkness, and their existence was a secret that the school had to protect. In the headmaster's office, Zero complained to Headmaster Cayenne, asking him to increase the number of the disciplinary committee because the work was too much. The headmaster let him know it was impossible, explaining that the academy was divided into day class and night class, and the truth about the night class had to be kept hidden from the day class while they coexisted. This was the critical duty of the guardians, which Cayenne couldn't entrust to anyone but Yuki and Zero. Cayenne wanted to put an end to the long, dark history of vampires and humans, and for this to work, he wanted the youth to use their open hearts to bridge the gap between the two races. As Zero left in irritation, the headmaster could understand his anger. After all, among the vampires, there were definitely blood-sucking demons that preyed on humans. But Yuki claimed Kaname was different, and that there were other vampires just like him. Yuki had no memories of anything before she was 5 years old. On that snowy night, Kaname brought her to Cayenne's house, and without knowing anything about her, the headmaster took her in. She believed she wouldn't be here today without Kaname. Everything that happened during the incident 10 years ago marked the start of her life. Senri and Takuma stumbled on Yuki during her patrol, but she quickly ran away. Takuma admired her, remarking that there weren't girls like her in the night class. Even Senri agreed she was a blinding sight. Takuma then reminded Senri, who was a pureblood, that because of his orders, they were abiding the rules of humans, but just barely. Elsewhere, we see Zero pulsating in pain and having to take blood tablets to calm himself. The next day, the teacher gave Yuki detention again for sleeping in class. After class, Yuki asked Yori to stay and study with her, since being with Zero was boring her. However, Yori pointed out that Zero wasn't even here. Yuki would later find him sleeping in a stable and scold him for skipping detention. She then gave him his armband, letting him know it was time for the switchover. As he took it and left, Yuki thought about how there were places in Zero's mind that were off limits. When night came, Zero asked her if she really believed that the day and night classes were getting along. Yuki answered that she did, because she wished for vampires and humans to get along. However, Zero didn't believe in the same pacifist ideas of the headmaster. The only reason he was a guardian was to find the most effective way to bring down those beasts in human form. His words made Yuki recall the time she first met him. Zero's family was killed by vampires, and in his eyes, she saw the vivid hatred for them. After 4 years together, he had opened up enough to joke with her, and she felt closer to him. But she still knew that not all vampires were like Kaname. She suspected her parents, whom she had no memory of, may have been attacked by vampires as well. She would then see some day class students and climb down a tree to confront them. She asked them to return to their dorms, but they wanted to take pictures of the night class students. When Yuki noticed one of them was bleeding, she tried to hurry them away. Then, she noticed someone's presence and whipped her staff to attack, but it turned out to be Akatsuki and Hanabusa. The two of them had become because they were attracted to the scent of her blood. Hanabusa showed the injury on her palm and forcefully drank from it, revealing his fangs. While trying to take more from her neck, Zero showed up to save her, threatening the vampires with his anti-vampire gun, the Bloody Rose. Oh baby, We getting Devil May Cry up in this. Kaname then came to take the two vampires to the headmaster for punishment, and had Seiren erase the memories of the two day class girls. He apologized to Yuki on behalf of his kin for scaring her. Zero hurriedly took Yuki away and bandaged her hand with his tie. Yuki wondered if it was impossible for her to erase the blackness in his heart, which he had nursed since 4 years ago. While she was drying her hair, Zero came into the bathroom, much to her surprise. He told her if she wanted to blame anyone, blame the bath in the dorm which was closed at dusk. She tossed a bottle at him for undressing in front of her. She could tell he was just thinking, well, I don't even consider you a girl, and felt insulted he changed in front of her so casually. Heading into the shower, he'd shut the door abruptly, being suddenly enticed by the sight of her neck, trying his best not to get any closer to her. Meanwhile, Hanabusa got suspended for 10 days as punishment, but he felt it was all worth it because of how tasty Yuki's blood was. Kaname, who overheard what he said, walked by and slapped him for saying such a thing. Heading towards the windowsill though, even he couldn't escape the thought of Yuki's blood, tempting him. Just like you can't escape me asking you to like the video and subscribe to my channel, because here on my Shoujo Weekly, I'm building up vampire stories in the shoujo genre. I have a whole playlist where you can go, so hit that subscribe or I'll suck your soul. The following day, the day class girls were excited about the annual St. Chocolates Day. This was a time when the girls would give chocolates to boys they had a crush on and declare their love. The boys doubted they'd get any chocolates since all the girls were only interested in the guys from the night class. Yuki claimed she wasn't interested, but Yori pointed out the gift idea in front of her. Not only that, but Zero was giving her a threatening glare, asking who she intended to give a gift to. Yuki then told him it was only a token of her appreciation to someone she was indebted to. With the entire school buzzing with excitement, Kyan asked his guardians to be more alert than usual because something might happen that would reveal the truth about the night class. Zero asked him just to ban the event, but the headmaster argued there would be a riot if he did so. Though vampires had been man's foes since ancient times, Kyan was proud that they were educating the children of those vampires who wished for a peaceful coexistence. He believed Zero would one day understand his thinking, but Zero didn't think it was possible unless the past disappeared. Yuki didn't understand why the headmaster always said things that were bound to stir up Zero's feelings. When they first met, Yuki led him to a bath, and when she removed his jacket, she was shocked to see blood all over his body. However, she simply took a small towel and began wiping off the blood. No matter what she said, Zero never responded. She felt the need to be cautious because the boy in front of her looked like he'd break into pieces. By evening, the girls were all gathered in front of the night class dormitory, eager to give the boys their chocolate. When one of the girls tried getting over the fence, she fell. But Zero caught her just in time and made it clear that the event might be canceled if anyone breaks the rules. The gates then opened, and the girls swarmed the night class boys as usual. They all stopped when Kaname suddenly approached Zero to ask how he was feeling, and told him to take care. Feeling upset, Zero told him he was ready anytime if Kaname wanted to test him. Yuki wondered if Zero was hiding something, and Kaname knew what that something was. Later on, Zero saw Yuki happily preparing chocolates for Kaname. As he left, a sudden pain hit him, causing him to stagger and fall to the ground. Kyan came to him, explaining that fighting his urges wouldn't change a thing. Yet, he was always pushing himself to his limit. The headmaster gave Zero a blood pill to help, but Zero smashed the glass. Kyan let him know that it would only get harder for him to control this. St. Chocolate's Day was here, and the guardians had to get to work. Yuki noticed Zero was acting off, and wondered if he was planning to do something to Kaname, but she believed he would never act without a reason. The day class girls then stood by their gates as they handed out their presents to the night class boys. Yuki did her best to make sure everything went smoothly, but she missed her chance to give Kaname a present. The present dropped out of her pocket as the girls ran over, so Zero helped by tossing it to Kaname. She didn't like him doing that on her behalf though. After that, he found himself being drawn to Yuki's neck again. Then, he quickly walked away. No, Kaname saved her life 10 years ago. She just thought of it as trivial happenstance, even though she wanted it to mean more. Meanwhile, Kaname held onto Yuki's gift, while giving the rest to Seiren. He used it to lightly tap his lips. At the stables, one of the girls approached Zero to give him a present, but he yelled at her to go away. Later at night, he was confronted by several night class students. Akatsuki tried to calm the situation, but Zero would slam him to the ground, eager to fight them all. That's when Yuki showed up to help her fellow guardian, causing the vampires to retreat to their class. She asked Zero why he was acting strange, but he simply walked away, telling her to leave him alone. He would find him in the bathroom and help him dry up. She wished he'd just talk to her, even a little. Then, gave him some of the chocolates that she made. Glancing at her neck, Zero's vampire impulses started, and he grabbed her shoulder, but quickly left after that. Yuki then noticed a blood tablet on the floor, which left her confused. The other vampires returned to Kaname and apologized. Takuma felt Zero was quite brave to take up Hanabusa's challenge, but Kaname didn't blame him because the incident 4 years ago completely changed his life. The headmaster prepared a feast for Yuki and Zero to properly commemorate them as members of the disciplinary committee. He snapped a picture of the two to commemorate the day. Later, the night class students heard there would be a dorm inspection coming up. Akatsuki quickly called Hanabusa to the side, asking him to get rid of all his junk, which were mostly items Kaname destroyed when he got his powers. Kaname would walk in on them, and seeing all this, he decided to remind Hanabusa about the privacy rules of the dorm. While Yuki sees the pictures taken without permission from the day students, some of them complained that the pictures were very precious. As the class president reprimanded Yuki, Zero showed up, seizing the picture album he was also hiding. After confiscating countless pictures, Yuki couldn't help but admit that they were really beautiful. She then caught sight of Zero slacking off under a tree. As she approached him, he quickly hid a pack of blood tablets in his pocket and walked away. Then, they went to the moon dormitory for the next inspection. But before going in, Yuki asked Zero to show what he had hidden in his pockets back then. She faked the fall, and as she landed on him, she snatched the drug pack. Before she could see what kind of medicine it was, Zero snatched it back and told her it was none of her business. As he left, Yuki chased after him, trying to let him know that he couldn't just leave without informing anyone. With no other choice, she trailed Zero into a nearby town, but she soon lost sight of him. While looking for Zero, she mistakenly bumped into a lady who seemed to be a vampire. After searching around for a while, she sat by a bench, wondering why she was hopeless. She thought she was over her anxiety, but anytime she was alone, Yuki was reminded of her encounter with the vampire when she was younger. Just then, a little boy with a red balloon ran past her, and when he got the balloon stuck in a tree, Yuki helped the boy retrieve it, but he suddenly ran off. She chased after the boy until he led her to a lonely area where the lady she had bumped into earlier was waiting to ambush her. As Yuki got closer to the boy, he suddenly grabbed her arm, revealing his fangs, and bit her. She managed to run away from the two vampires, but Yuki couldn't believe the vampires she saw as beautiful could be so vicious. Though her mind was conflicted, she took out her staff to face the monsters. Meanwhile, Zero, who was tracking her scent, got attacked by one of the vampires. He brought his gun to take the monster down, but it suddenly stopped, recognizing him as a comrade. Hearing those words, Zero shot the vampire, and as his body dissipated, the other little boy was standing before him. Zero was reminded of his younger brother, Ichiru, as he saw the little boy. The boy then leaped into the tower, where Zero heard Yuki scream. Yuki was holding the boy back when he caused the tower's bell to ring and disorient her. But the young vampire froze in fear upon seeing Kaname. Kaname would cover Yuki's eyes as he used his powers to defeat the vampire. He then revealed to Yuki that the boy was a level E vampire. He thought she was a naughty girl, coming to such a dangerous place all alone. Kaname then offered to escort her back, but she had no idea Zero was close by. At night, Kaien praised Kaname for being the rarest breed among today's vampires, a pureblood. But Kaname shoved the topic aside and confronted the headmaster for still treating Zero like a regular student, and questioned if he intended to allow Zero to destroy his ideals of peace. Kaname also reminded Kaien that a pure-blooded vampire like himself killed Zero's family. After revealing Kaien to be a former vampire hunter, Kaname also brought up how humans who were bitten by purebloods would turn into vampires as well. At the same time, Yuki finally found Zero while out on her night patrol. She spoke about finally understanding why Zero hated vampires, but he warned her not to come any closer. She thought they shared the same pain, and as Yuki turned to leave, Zero held her back, revealing her wound. Catching the scent of her blood, he couldn't resist any longer. He licked her neck and then bit it. Yuki, who was still confused, looked down and saw the blood tablets he'd been hiding. Zero finally came back to his senses, but Yuki was now aware he was a vampire. Arriving at the scene, Kaname stepped in to protect Yuki, but she feared he would kill Zero. When she tried to calm him down, she fainted due to blood loss. Kaname then carried Yuki away and tended to her wounds, but she was still hurt at the thought of Zero being a vampire. Afterwards, Kaien came to the infirmary and apologized for keeping his secret for so long from her. He explained that Zero was found with deep fang marks after surviving the vampire attack on his family, and that it was the work of a pureblood. But he assured Yuki that she wouldn't turn into a vampire, since Zero wasn't a pureblood. She overheard a conversation between Kaien and Kaname as they discussed transferring Zero to the night class. She realized Zero must have hated himself all this while being one of those beasts in human form. Not seeing Zero in class the next day, she ran to the moon dormitory and found Hanabusa chasing out some men who wanted him to help with their research facility. Thereafter, he offered to take her to Kaname. but then asked about the bite marks on her neck. He had noticed the smell of her blood last night, but Kaname told him and the other vampires to forget about it. She blushed, thinking about how he said that. Irritated at Kaname's favoritism towards her, Hanabusa would unleash his ice powers, freezing Yuki's leg. He asked what she was to Kaname, and she explained how he had saved her life 10 years ago. Hearing this, Hanabusa claimed her blood belonged to Kaname and warned her not to give it to anyone else. He even told her to ask Kaname to drink her blood right away. While freezing her body, he wanted to hit him, but Kaname would show up to stop the both of them. After getting slapped, Hanabusa quickly apologized for his actions. Kaname promised he didn't want Yuki to change because she was the one person who was different from the others who served him. He felt warmth from her, and that was more than enough. Kaname then warned her not to come alone next time, but instead to bring Zero, considering he had stolen something from her. Yuki didn't like the way he phrased that, but he couldn't just ignore the fact that another vampire had bitten the girl he held very dear. Yuki then begged Kaname not to put Zero in the night class, feeling guilty about hurting him. But this was the one request Kaname couldn't grant her. He explained that every human who mutated into a vampire would eventually become a level E. As she ran out, Hanabusa questioned why Lord Kaname, the last surviving member of the Kuran family, was so attached to her. Moreover, none of the vampires there wanted to be in the same place as Zero, because he came from a vampire hunter family. Kaname simply answered that Yuki was the one and only girl in this world he held dear. In his room, Zero was just about to end his life with his anti-vampire pistol when Yuki came in to stop him, but he would beg her to kill before he lapsed into a level E vampire. He feared he wouldn't be able to stop himself from killing his next prey. Regardless, Yuki couldn't do such a thing, so Zero took his things and left. After seeing a picture she took with him on the ground, she chased after Zero to stop him from leaving. Yuki assured him everything would be okay, which made him remember the way she comforted him in the past. Then, she promised to be his ally as well. Elsewhere, Kyan met with the president of the Vampire Hunter Association and assured him that Zero wasn't giving any trouble. However, the president had dispatched someone else to find out if Zero truly posed a danger to the academy. Zero put a drop of his blood on top of a bracelet, which Kyan gave Yuki. The headmaster then cast a spell on the bracelet, which would immobilize Zero should he ever lose control and try to bite someone again. Basically, the bracelet reacts to a tattoo on Zero's neck and causes him to collapse. Kyan also informed Yuki that Kaname had agreed Zero could stay in the day class. The following day, a new ethics teacher known as Tuga Yagari joined the school. While all the girls began asking him personal questions, particularly about what covered the right side of his face, Zero suddenly left the class. Yuki ran out to get him, but they would meet Headmaster Kyan at the gate. Afterwards, Zero and Yuki were sent errands at the town. When they went to a cafe, Yuki asked if he knew Yagari, but Zero didn't answer. Then, one of his waitresses came over and mistook Zero for a night class student. She began to clamor on about the elites, specifically about Hanabusa. However, Zero would leave, questioning if he actually exuded the same scent as those vampires. Suddenly, he caught the scent of blood and quickly followed the trail. Yuki came out seconds later. Unable to find him, she started searching the town. While in the alleyway, a level E vampire suddenly attacked her. She was frozen in fear as the vampire rushed towards her, but luckily, Zero showed up and used her staff to fend off the beast. The vampire was then finished off by Takuma, who came along with Senri. Yuki asked why they had done this, and Takuma told her if she wanted to know, then she should come to the Moon Dormitory tonight. When Yuki arrived, Zero was already waiting there. He gave her an anti-vampire gun and told her to kill him with it should he ever lose his humanity. She argued that she could just use the spell Kyan gave her, but Zero let her know it was only effective for now. Still, Yuki refused to believe that a day would come when he would devolve into a level E. As they went into the dorm, Hanabusa and Akatsuki showed up to escort them. A lot of vampires were out that night and weren't particularly happy to see Yuki and Zero. Then, they met up with Takuma, who was having his birthday party tonight. But Yuki just wanted to know why he had attacked the level E vampire. Takuma would explain that the vampire society was ruled by several purebloods and aristocrats. Everyone in the night class was also ranked noble, and it was their job to hunt down level E vampires. Kadame was the one who ordered the two of them to hunt down that level E. He then called over Yuki and Zero and made her sit next to him because it was the safest place for her. Kaname claimed vampires who were once humans should never have been born. Ages ago, when the war between vampires and vampire hunters was at its worst, a lot of humans were forced into the vampire side for military power. Since then, vampires who are ranked nobles or higher have had to oversee the once human vampires. Zero immediately argued it was the job of vampire hunters to hunt vampires, but Kaname questioned why he didn't hunt a level E vampire back then. Kaname proceeded to unveil Yuki's injury and put his lips to it, healing with his powers. As he asked if Zero sympathized with the level E vampire, it made him furious, causing him to pull out his gun on Kaname. But Seiren was immediately there to handle Zero if he pulled the trigger. Hanabusa was ready to rip Zero apart for his actions, but he wouldn't. Still, he reminded Zero that vampires were at this academy due to the presence of the pureblood, Kaname. Yuki was shocked because this was the first she had heard of Kaname being a pureblood. Takuma would then call everyone's attention back to his birthday party, reminding them that Yuki and Zero were still his guests. Feeling uncomfortable with the atmosphere, Zero left the party, but Yuki quickly chased after him. She found him by a poolside and saw his body was rejecting the blood tablets. Struggling with pain, Zero attempted to bite her. However, Yuki dived into the pool with him, which brought Zero back to his senses. Suddenly, Yagari showed up and shot Zero in the shoulder, saying, "Die resenting me, vampire." And Zero faintly referred to him as Master. We learned that Yagari lost his eye in the past to save Zero, but he never regretted that decision. He saw vampires as pitiful creatures who couldn't control their instincts, which was why they hunted them. Now, Zero was in a lot of pain because the bullet Yagari used had an anti-vampire spell embedded in it. As Yagari was about to finish off his former pupil, Yuki shielded Zero with her body, but Zero told her it was alright. Just then, Kaien came running to stop Yagari from doing anything more. Yagari then revealed to Yuki that he was Zero's master when he was still a vampire hunter. Later, in her room, Yuki worried about Zero being unable to take the blood tablets, and she feared he would eventually degenerate into a level E vampire. Yori then tried to comfort Yuki, seeing that a lot had been troubling her lately. Yuki noticed Zero was absent from class the next day, so she had to do work as a member of the disciplinary committee alone. Afterwards, she searched for Zero in his room, but he wasn't there either. Yuki would then confront Yagari, who let her know he had put Zero in isolation to prevent him from attacking anyone else. When she asked where exactly Zero was, Yagari shoved her off and left her to teach ethics at the night class. Kaname also came by, advising Yuki to reconsider Zero's transfer to the night class. After Yagari introduced himself, Ruka quickly realized he was the #1 vampire hunter. He assured them that he was still an excellent teacher. When Kaname asked if he had come to kill one of them, Yagari claimed his execution list was empty, but threatened to add Kaname to it if he fell asleep in class. Of course, this angered the other vampires. Before Yagari left after teaching, he was attacked with a throwing knife, but blocked it with his book. He decided to keep it as a memento of having vampire students. Dang, this man is aura farming. When he came out, he found Yuki still waiting to know where he had kept Zero. So, he finally told her that Zero was in Kaien's guest room. Meeting Zero, he tried to chase Yuki away, but she refused to go, questioning why he was so obedient to Yagari. Zero then told her that Yagari usually looked after him and his little brother when their parents were out hunting vampires. During that time, he saw a level E vampire for the first time. The head nurse at their grade school was kind and very pretty, but in reality, she was a once human vampire. One day, she transformed into a raging vampire, and when Yagari tried to end her, Zero shielded the nurse, which gave her the chance to slash out Yagari's eye. That was the first time Zero had felt real fear towards vampires. Okay, so that's 100% Zero's fault. We have a term for what he caused to happen to his master's eye. It's called suicidal empathy. Yuki then entered the room, shoving him against the wall, and she would offer her blood to him. Unable to resist the urge, Zero fed on her, but felt shameful immediately after. He warned Yuki to give up on him, because this would eventually make him hunger for her blood. But she dismissed it, insisting that she would tame the beast inside of him. She didn't want to give up on him. Yuki knew it was unforgivable for a human to use their blood to sustain a vampire. No one could find out about this. And on her way back, she bumped into Kaname, who questioned where she had been. She feared telling him anything, but Kaname hoped what she was trying to protect wouldn't end up hurting her. Yuki had already told herself she'd never regret what she did for Zero, but wondered why it hurt so much. As she left, Yagari confronted Kaname and questioned why he hadn't killed Zero for what he had done. He must be burning with rage on the inside. Kaname answered that it was so that he wouldn't lose his girl. The following day, Yagari confronted Zero, pointing his gun at him for drinking human blood. Seeing that they were both absent from class, Yuki sensed something was wrong and left to find them. As she came into the room, Yagari pulled the trigger, but Zero moved the gun away just in time. Yagari then reminded Zero that he had pledged an oath not to make him regret ever saving him. A solemn oath, not to make him regret giving up his eye. So, he asked Zero to keep struggling and not choose the easy way out. Yagari then asked Yuki to stop Zero the next time he went on a rampage, and he revealed that he had never had the intention of killing him. Before leaving, he told Zero about a woman who was still alive, something he wasn't expecting. Yuki thought Zero was really going to die, but he promised he would never run away again. He just didn't want her to keep crying. During Zero's target practice, Yuki stood by his side, worried about him. She was plugging her ears with her fingers. "They're not coming here with earplugs?" He didn't like the bandage on her neck, but she explained it was better instead of having a band-aid that could easily be ripped off. Zero felt she would have preferred to have Kaname suck her blood instead of him. He was able to sense her feelings the last time he tasted her blood. Hearing this, Yuki got upset and left because it felt like he was prying into her personal life. Regardless, no one knew better than Yuki what Kaname meant to her. In a flashback, she recalled the first time Kaname brought her to Kaien. Seeing his fangs reminded her of the vicious vampire that attacked her. So, Kaname left, feeling it was better to stay away from her. Even though back at home, there was only a den of monsters waiting to attack him. As Yuki remained staring out the window, Kaien assured her there was nothing to be afraid of. Weeks after he legally became her adoptive father, Yuki still remained staring outside. Kaien sulked a bit because she still hadn't said a word to him. So, he brought Kaname back to take a look at her. Seeing the young Yuki put on her clothes the wrong way made Kaname burst into laughter. Then, on his way out, Yuki held him back, calling his name for the first time. Eventually, she drew closer to him. Later, she learned Kaname was a vampire, but Kaien let her know there were vampires she could be friendly with. She thought he was different. One day, Yuki would go into town, searching for him. She froze in fear as a vampire drew closer to her. That's when Kaname showed up behind her, which gave her relief. So long as he was with her, she wasn't scared of anything. Days later, Kaien would introduce Yuki to Zero, whose family was killed by a vampire. Yuki came across Zero, clawing out his neck because he could still feel the touch of that vampire woman. She told him to stop, promising everything would be all right, and she'd always be with him. During dinner, she was happy to introduce Kaname to Zero, but upon seeing a vampire, Zero attacked him with a knife. Kaname, however, blocked his attack and let him know that he was mistaking his target of revenge. When Yuki tried to apologize to Zero, he slapped her away. Even though she tried to explain that Kaname was a nice vampire, Zero believed there was something wrong with her and Kaien. When Kaien established Cross Academy with day and night class students, Zero was infuriated. He refused to believe that vampires and humans could coexist peacefully. One night, Yuki went looking for Kaname in the temporary dorms for vampires. There, she met Hanabusa, who informed her that Kaname wasn't around at the time. Still, she decided to stay inside and wait. The other vampires paid her no mind in order not to get in trouble with Kaname. She would fall asleep on the stairs after hours of waiting. Kaname would show up in time to stop a vampire from feeding on her. But he too was tempted to taste Yuki's blood, though he held back the urges. When she woke up, she saw Kaname drinking Ruka's blood, which frightened her and made her run away. Yuki believed it was all a bad dream, and Kaname would never do such a thing. Even when Zero told her vampires were simply beasts in human form, she still wanted to believe Kaname was different from the rest. Back in the present, Zero found Yuki asleep on the couch. As he covered her with a blanket, he was drawn to her neck. But at that moment, Kaname appeared and asked him to come out for a bit. Outside, Kaname made it clear that he was only keeping Zero alive so he could serve as a shield for Yuki. Something changed inside of Yuki this day, but there was one thing inside that would never change: the fact that she'd always loved Kaname. Takuma came looking for Kaname in his room, but there was no response, and this worried the rest of the night class students. However, Takuma told them not to worry, because Kaname probably had a lot on his mind. A maid then came to deliver books to his room, but she needed Kaname to sign a document for someone who planned to visit. Taking a look at the paper, Takuma panicked as he saw his grandfather was the one visiting. In the day world, there wasn't a business Takuma's grandfather wasn't involved in. He also created the Ichijo group, and in the dark world, he was the head of one of the most elite vampire families. Asato Ichijo, aka Ichiyo, was one of the members of the Senate with the highest authority. Ruka reassured Takuma there was no reason to fear his grandfather. Though the Senate was the supreme governing body of the vampire society, It wasn't their sovereign. Still, Takuma didn't want peace in the dorm to be disturbed, for Kaname's sake as well. At night, the vampires were all anxious about Asato's visit. Surprisingly, Kaname left his room to say hello, because it had been a while since he'd seen Asato. Upon entering the moon dorm, Asato appreciated the warm welcome, but clarified he was only here to see his grandson. Noticing Kaname, Asato recalled he hadn't seen the pureblood since Kaname rejected his offer to be his guardian. Captivated by the power and beauty of a pureblood, he requested to drink Kaname's blood, but Ruka and Hanabusa would step in to defend their lord, explaining that drinking the blood of a pureblood was taboo. As Hanabusa claimed to not fear Asato, Kaname slapped him for overstepping and apologized to him. Even the feared Asato still kneeled before Kaname. Later, Ruka would come into Kaname's room and offer her blood to him, but he declined. On her way out, she saw Akatsuki and complained to him about being rejected. Kaname only wanted to drink her blood the first time she came to the academy. She felt like a fool for not being able to understand him, even though she loved him so much. Meanwhile, Asato told Takuma to continue serving Kaname while keeping an eye on him. That was the only reason he was allowed to stay at the academy. But Takuma told his grandfather he wouldn't become a detriment to his friend. Suddenly, Yuki and Zero came to escort Asato to Kain's office. Kain would come to bid Asato farewell, and upon seeing Kaname, Yuki was flustered. She thanked him for yesterday before leaving. She accidentally walked in on Zero in the bathroom, and let him know that she never wished to give her blood to Kaname. She had a duty to give Zero her blood, so it's not like she could give a feast to different people. As she asked if he was going to turn her down, Zero pinned her to the wall, leaving her flustered and trembling. It was obvious she was the one who wasn't prepared. Yuki then left angrily because she didn't like the way he tested her. Afterward, Kain asked Zero to hunt down a level E vampire as a test from the Hunter Society to see if he was worthy to carry on the Kiryu name. Zero wasn't allowed to refuse the order. The next day, Yuki saw Zero leaving and tailed him all the way into town. Thereafter, she came across Senri and Rima, who were also tasked with hunting down the same vampire. Meanwhile, Zero confronted the vampire, who began rambling about how ecstatic it was to dig his fangs into his target. The vampire slipped away and got into a fight with Senri, but still managed to get away. Yuki chased after the target, but was caught off guard, and before the vampire could feed on her, that's when Zero showed up and killed him. Yuki would then thank Zero for saving her. Elsewhere, a girl was watching through the eyes of a crow, and was happy to have found Zero. She then decided to attend Cross Academy. Zero would dream of being cradled in a strange woman's arms, and she stated that they were tied by a bond, which couldn't be severed. The next morning, Yuki had a tougher time holding back the day students, and she noticed they were more excited than usual. Zero explained it was because of an upcoming event. When the gates opened and the night class students trooped out, Zero was able to hold his side back, but Yuki was swept by the crowd, struggling to hold him back. She was eventually saved by Hanabusa. However, Kaname warned she would get badly hurt if she kept trying so hard. But Zero quickly dragged her out. Katsuki then explained to Ruka that it was so noisy because of an upcoming ball. At night, Kain would ask Yuki to help show a transfer student around the academy. As the girl entered the office, the headmaster introduced her as Maria Kurenai. Maria commented on how tasty Yuki looked, but Kain quickly warned that such things were taboo at the academy. While being shown around, Maria told Yuki she was scared the other vampires wouldn't accept her because of her weak constitution. Yuki then let her know there was no need to worry because the dorm president and vice president were nice. Moreover, if anything happened, Maria could tell Yuki or the headmaster. Maria would hug Yuki with a sinister look on her face, saying she loved girls like her. She had a huge contrast from acting innocent to dark and possessive. Joining the night class, Maria was already able to instill fear in Hanabusa. As Kaname told her to properly introduce herself, she got so close to him, even holding his hand, leaving the other vampires stunned at how bold she was. Seeing how uncomfortable everyone was, Maria then left. During night duty, Yuki met up with Zero and scolded him for slacking off. Then, she told him the girl he saved during his last hunt had her memories erased and she was doing fine. But Zero didn't really care. After all, he was only doing his duty as a vampire hunter. Yuki didn't like the way he always just satisfied himself with his own reasons. She worried a lot about him and feared one day he would leave without telling to take revenge on the vampire that killed his family. However, Zero didn't feel he was obligated to tell her such things. She argued that he was because it was her job to kill him. Yuki still had the pistol he gave her, and she was determined to fulfill her promise. If he disappeared, she couldn't do that. Maria would encounter them. And seeing her, Zero quickly pulled out his pistol. But Yuki shielded Maria with her body. Maria then thanked Yuki and brought up how tasty her blood would be again before leaving. And unknown to them, Hanabusa was watching. The next day, Maria was still making the other vampires uncomfortable with her personality. While they sat for Yagari's class, Zero was by the window watching Maria. But she too was aware of him. Later, Kaname allowed her to stay in the former night class dorm since she was uncomfortable with her current one. Elsewhere, Hanabusa asked Akatsuki if he had ever seen Shizuka Hyo before. She was a pureblood whose lineage was on par with the Kuran family, but she disappeared after going mad. Apparently, after killing Zero's family, she went missing. Hanabusa decided to stop because he felt talking about her was bad luck. With the ball drawing closer, Yuki was having a harder time keeping the crowd under control. More than that, she was worried about the year-end exams. Suddenly, the class president showed up, stating it was a serious problem. The ball was a cross-academy tradition, and it was said that the class with the lowest score in the exams would be forced to work backstage. The class president was very worried about Yuki because she almost brought down her class average, especially since the ball was an important event where the day and night classes participated together. He threatened to hold a grudge against Yuki forever if he missed a chance to dance with Ruka. Zero caught sight of Takuma chasing Maria, who was running around the school during the day. As Yuki tried to help, Zero stopped and warned her not to go anywhere near Maria. When Hanabusa showed up, he'd give Yuki a squeeze, and all the girls squealed with jealousy. Zero then called him over to talk for a bit privately. He asked him if Maria had something to do with Shizuka, and Hanabusa revealed that Maria was a distant relative of Shizuka's family. Zero hadn't been able to find Shizuka for 4 years, and assumed it was because she had changed her appearance. But Hanabusa didn't know about that, explaining that purebloods only knew the powers of other purebloods. But he claimed Zero would know better than anyone else, since he had a blood bond with Shizuka. Later that night, Kaname asked Takuma to keep an eye on Maria, feeling it would disrupt the peace of the night class if he intervened, especially since the pawns Maria desired were gathered here. Zero recalled telling his younger brother Ichiru to flee after Shizuka had slaughtered their family. When the moon dormitory gates opened this time, there wasn't so much noise. Walking out, Maria tried to touch Yuki's hair, but Zero would pull her away. He begged Yuki once again to stay away from Maria by all means. At night, Kaien then asked Zero to help Yuki with her studies for the upcoming exam. During their study session, Yuki noticed Zero holding back his neck and asked what was wrong. He replied that the spot Shizuka had bitten him was still throbbing. The memories of the horrible things she did to him and his brother still lingered in his mind. Seeing Zero wasn't acting like his usual self, Yuki decided to go make some coffee. But he stood up and held her back, leaving her to wonder what was really wrong. She asked if he craved her blood. Then, Zero told her that she was the reason he was able to survive. After he left, she couldn't shake off the feeling that something had been on his mind since Maria showed up. So, she chased after him, while pondering who exactly Maria was to Zero. Meanwhile, Zero went to the old dorm to confront Maria. She told him straight he had the ability to sense her presence because there was a bond between them. But when he pulled out his gun to kill her, he couldn't pull the trigger because Maria was actually his vampire master, Shizuka. Yuki, who had followed Zero, was shocked to hear this. At that moment, Maria's companion dropped a sword for her, and she got into a clash with Zero. Yuki tried to stop them, but she was quickly dragged away by someone else. Distracted by Yuki's faint voice, Zero was struck by Maria, and he passed out due to the intense blood loss. Maria then asked her companion to take him away. All the while, Kaname, who had dragged Yuki away, erased her memory of the incident. The following day, Yuki struggled to recall anything, but she kept looking at the absent seat where Zero was supposed to be. After classes, Yori invited Yuki to a cafe, but on their way, Yuki's vision was hazy and she seemed out of it. As Yori suggested she go back home to rest, Kaname approached her. He would ask her out to the ball, reminding her of the times they danced together when they were younger. He always wanted to be by her side and protect her back then, and still now, he didn't want to see her get hurt. Kaname then let Yuki know he would always be there for her. Takuma was able to confirm to Kaname that she didn't seem to remember last night's events. In the headmaster's office, Yagari was furious at Kaien for letting Maria into the school. Kaien explained that Kaname was the one who recommended her, and since the vampire world had its own rules, it was better to allow them to handle things. Maria would later confront Yuki for forgetting about Zero, and use a cat to unlock her memories of what happened. She told Yuki that Zero was alright for now, but he would eventually degenerate into a level E vampire. In order to save him, she decided to strike a deal with Yuki, something only she could do. Meanwhile, Zero had a dream of when he was younger, and he sensed Shizuka was a vampire, but Ichiru was unaware of this. That night, Zero stayed in bed with his brother, who had a fever, to take care of him. When Shizuka came to their house that same night, Zero quickly sensed her presence. In front of his parents, she bit Zero and left her mark on him. When she slaughtered his family, Ichiru was smiling as he stood beside her. All this because they killed someone important to her, so this was revenge. Zero woke up from the dreadful dream and greeted Maria's companion, who turned out to be Ichiru. Ichiru pulled out his gun on Zero, finding him unsightly for not being able to control his hunger properly. He felt his brother must have known about the darkness growing in his heart all along. Ichiru saw himself as inferior due to his weak body, and eventually, he stopped caring about his parents and began hating Zero. He told Zero that it was only because of him that Shizuka spared his life. Ichiru saw her as a goddess because she had freed his body of illness. He asked Zero to come serve Shizuka alongside him, but as Zero refused, a fight broke out between them. Suddenly, Zero fell to his knees, fighting the pain of slowly becoming a level E vampire. Ichiru mocked him, but upon leaving, Yagari stormed into the room. He quickly rushed to help Zero. However, Ichiru held his sword against his former master, claiming he could now battle him. Yagari refused to fight him because he still saw Ichiru as a pupil. Enraged, Ichiru tried to attack, but Zero blocked him, causing Ichiru's sword to fly into the air. And before it could pierce him, Yagari used his body to shield him, resulting in him getting stabbed. Zero then brought Yagari to Kaien, and Yagari informed the headmaster about his encounter with Ichiru. While Yuki and the rest of her class were decorating for the ball, Zero suddenly stormed in, searching for Maria. Yuki followed him into a storage room and offered her blood to him. Overcome with hunger, he immediately fed on her. Seeing how far gone Zero was, Yuki recalled Maria's deal to save him. It was either she offered herself or offered Kaname's dead body to Maria. Zero managed to regain his senses after feeding on Yuki's blood, but he felt ashamed of himself. Kaien then approached him and asked him to be on strict guard duty during the ball. This time around, it was an order from the headmaster. Meanwhile, Yuki planned to go to the ball in her school uniform, but Yori would deliver a dress to her from Kaname. After dressing up, she met up with Zero to begin their guard duty. He noticed she seemed more keen about the ball than before. Inside the hall, she fixed his tie and pinned the rose she had on her dress to his uniform. Zero couldn't understand how Yuki could keep smiling despite everything that had happened, but it was only because she wanted him to look happy as well. Later, Yuki went to meet Kaname on the terrace. He was happy to see her wearing the dress he sent, and then asked her to dance with him. As they did, Yuki noticed Kaname wasn't dancing to the rhythm of the music. He wanted them to have a slow dance like they did long ago. Yuki suddenly asked why Kaname kept treating her like a child. She knew he was the one who tampered with her memory the other night, but he was only trying to protect her. Recalling Maria's demand for Kaname's life, Yuki ran out to look for her. After declining a girl who asked to dance with him, Zero approached Kaname to ask for Yuki's whereabouts. Kaname reminded him that he was to be Yuki's shield, so Zero rushed out to look for her. Meanwhile, Hanabusa and Akatsuki left the ball and found Shizuka's real body encased in ice in an underground chamber. Seiren then appeared, warning them not to go any further. Hearing this, Akatsuki figured Kaname must want them to stay away. Plus, there was nothing they could do against a pureblood princess. Confronting Maria, Yuki asked her to save Zero, and in exchange, she offered herself. She knelt before Maria, feeling glad that her blood would save him. Suddenly, Maria tossed her to the side. Then, Ichiru walked in with Shizuka's real body. As Shizuka awakened, she told Yuki that Zero had to drink her blood to be saved. Back at the ball, asked Akatsuki to join him and his flock of ladies, but Akatsuki declined, stating he had urgent business to take care of. Before leaving, he dragged Takuma, trying to make sure he wasn't planning to feed on those girls. After Takuma assured him, Akatsuki left to find Kaname. On the terrace, he found Ruka standing alone, refusing to dance with anyone except Kaname. When Akatsuki offered to dance with her, she ignored him. Meanwhile, Shizuka requested Yuki's blood so she could regain her power and be able to face her pursuers. As she was about to feed on Yuki, Zero ran in, interrupting them. He pulled his gun on her, but Yuki drew her staff against him explained that he could only be saved if he drank Shizuka's blood. But he didn't want her risking her life. Even when Yuki tried to use the bracelet on him, Zero stopped her. While they were both distracted, Shizuka used her voice to compel Zero to hold down Yuki. Being her master, he couldn't disobey her order. Yuki cried out for Shizuka to stop tormenting Zero, but Shizuka would feed on him and then tell Yuki that she too made Zero suffer. Yuki could only wish he would forgive her. Hearing her voice, Zero freed himself and held Shizuka by the throat. In order to completely break free of her hold, he shot himself in the leg, and then shot Shizuka with his anti-vampire gun. But she laughed, completely acting unfazed by the injury. Ichiru then showed up and threw his sword into Zero's hand. He asked why Shizuka was playing around, fearing she'd be hunted down, but she told him there was no need to worry before leaving. Zero chased after her, but Ichiru would stop him, asking if he intended to leave the vampire world. Slashing his mask off, Zero then introduced Ichiru to Yuki as his twin brother. Meanwhile, Kain went to give Yagari some food to help him recover strength. Seeing Yagari was still upset, he explained he couldn't interfere in vampire matters, and had left Kaname to handle the night class. Before leaving, he made it clear that Yuki and Zero weren't vampires. Back with Zero and Ichiru, the little brother claimed he wasn't the same Ichiru who always hindered Zero. He had now drunk the blood of Shizuka, and felt Zero was itching to get some of the pureblood powers as well. Yuki tried to stop the brothers from fighting, but Ichiru threatened to kill her. Zero would point his gun at his brother, but it turned out Ichiru was still human. As the two brothers fought, Ichiru lamented about Shizuka not desiring his blood. He continued complaining about how he was neglected by their parents. That was until Shizuka saved him from that loneliness. Yet, she still chose Zero. Despite being at her side for so long, Shizuka would never look at him. Shizuka, with her blood all over her, went to her room and was surprised to meet Kaname there. She asked why he decided to attend Cross Academy, and Kaname answered it was to repay a debt, and it was also ideal for gathering his pawns. The two of them wanted more power, and Kaname would do anything for the sake of the woman he loved. Suddenly, he pierced Shizuka's heart with his hand. Because her healing powers were diminished, tearing out her heart might actually kill a pureblood like her. As he drank her blood, she recalled he had wanted the same thing she did as a child, and now it hadn't changed. Kaname then promised to destroy the one thing she despised, those who twisted the fate of the purebloods. Thanks to drinking the blood of another pureblood, Kaname gained new powers, but Shizuka told him that an ominous future awaited him. The other vampires quickly realized Kaname had killed her. As Zero noticed the strong smell of blood, Ichiru ran out to find Shizuka. Zero tried to chase after him, but Yuki held him back, asking what he'd do after killing her. She feared Zero would die if he killed her. He admitted that it was true, which is why he didn't want Yuki to go so far for him. But all she wanted was for him not to die. He hugged her tightly, letting her know she didn't need to worry about him so much. As he left, he told Yuki to stay behind and promised he'd come back. As Shizuka slowly died beside Ichiru, he offered his blood to save her. But he was the one person she refused to turn into a vampire. Plus, it was already too late. Her body began to dissipate. She recalled Ichiru visiting her body when she first took over Maria's. He wasn't too happy that she had to change her identity, and her speech and appearance were strange to him. She then offered him some of her blood from her real body. Ichiru wanted to become a vampire, but Shizuka refused, because if she turned him, he wouldn't be able to speak his mind. The only reason she turned Zero into a vampire was because she knew he wouldn't submit so easily, which she found entertaining. She spoke of a man whom she once turned into a vampire so she could have a talking companion. That was the first time she felt an attachment towards someone. They ran away to a faraway place, but Ichiru's parents killed him. Seeking revenge, she killed his parents. Maria then kissed Ichiru, but he didn't like to be teased. Knowing she didn't like him that way, she decided to pretend not to notice his feelings and keep a distance to prevent him from dying like the man she had once had an attachment to. With Shizuka's body fading away faster, Zero felt a sharp pain in his chest. He walked into the room and saw that Ichiru had drunk Shizuka's blood. After Shizuka's body turned to dust, Zero tried to explain to his brother that Shizuka was only saving him from becoming a vampire. Yet, he was upset that Zero knew more about her than he did. Zero also had someone he didn't want to turn into a vampire, so he understood Shizuka's feelings perfectly. Ichiru then left, seeing his brother as nothing but a level E vampire. Zero's thirst for blood became stronger, causing him to collapse in pain. By the time Yuki and Akatsuki got into the room, she met Kaien, who told her that Zero had been taken to the clinic in the Hunters Association by Yagari. The next day, Kaien informed Yuki it wouldn't be too long till Zero returned, even though he wanted him to stay a bit longer. So, he asked Yuki that they go visit him sometime later. Yuki then asked the headmaster if he knew about Shizuka, but Kaien lied, saying he had no idea. Akatsuki then reported to Kaname about Shizuka and Zero. Kaname doubted Zero would have killed her, but claimed it wouldn't be wrong to assume such. He acted sympathetically about Shizuka's death, because someone had broken the taboo of killing a pureblood. Akatsuki noticed Hanabusa seemed troubled after they met with Kaname. Hanabusa explained that Shizuka had a fiancé who was a pureblood, but still kept a once-human vampire at her side. He had heard that by the time the man was killed, he hadn't even lapsed into a level E yet, which meant his name shouldn't have been on the hunters list. Since the aristocrats didn't want confrontation with vampire hunters, they labeled Shizuka's act against the Kiryu family as madness. Given that she was running away from the Senate, Hanabusa wondered why she risked coming to Cross Academy. He knew she wanted power from a pureblood vampire, and she wasn't the only one who wanted it too. Later, Kaname met Yuki and apologized for getting her dragged into all this. Yet, she still wouldn't let him protect her, and he felt it would be hard for Zero to assume that role now. Yuki felt guilty for all the pain Zero had been put through, but Kaname told her not to feel like that because it was the least Zero could do. Still, she decided to believe in Zero's words, and that he would return to her. Meanwhile, Zero was locked in an underground area by Yagari, and despite being drugged, it was only a matter of time before he fully became a level E. He begged to be killed, but Kaien let him know that Yuki was still waiting for him. Kaien and Yagari would be distracted by a large bang, allowing Kaname to visit Zero discreetly. He then offered his blood to Zero, explaining that it would save him from the madness. He made it clear that it wasn't for his sake, but for Yuki's. So, Zero was forced to drink, and all he could think about was Yuki. Okay, wow. So, that series is done and in the books. What did I think? I mean, this is a vampire romance clearly inspired by Devil May Cry. They even have the twin brothers, pistols, and swords. Although the characters are probably more female appealing since it's a shoujo. Zero is more serious and angsty, while Kaname is tall and has a lot of presence and distance. The art has an edge that's indicative of pre-2010s. Pretty much all anime had an art style similar, but the video quality itself is very low. I don't know. If you like classics, you probably like this. If you don't, well, it's nice to hear and preserve this piece of history. Subscribe and let me know if you want me to cover Season 2. But for now, watch this next video. It's me, Comfy Tea. I'll see you all in the next one.